Hi boys and girls, this is Mr. Giomini. Wanted to come to you with a quick video on today's lesson 6.3, represent percents greater than 100 or less than 1. And I apologize for being out for the second consecutive day. I hopefully will be back tomorrow, Thursday. That is my goal. If I am back tomorrow, or excuse me, I'm back on Thursday, you can rest assured that we will have a quiz, the midpoint quiz, on Friday. If I am not back, then the midpoint quiz might be pushed back to Monday. But my thought is I should be back on Thursday. Anyways, I'm going to do a couple examples. If the sub would kindly every so often pause to kind of let the kids do the work, copy the notes as we go along. This will really help them out. And boys and girls, if you take the notes, this should help you as you do your practice tonight. Let's take a look here. So we want to represent percents greater than 100 or less than 1. Up to this point, we've been dealing with percents that are obviously less than 100 but greater than 1. So we want to take a look at some problems here and see what we can do. Now it says here, write each percent as a fraction and as a decimal. So we have to do two things here. We have to write each of these percents as a fraction and as a decimal. Well, I'm going to focus on the first one here. They give us 137%. Obviously, I could tell that I have more than 100. All percents are out of 100. So if I wanted to write this as a fraction, I want to write this as a fraction. Very simple. It's just 137 over 100. Now before I say yes, that's the correct fraction, I must see if I can simplify this by seeing if the dividend and divisor have a common factor, or the numerator and denominator have a common factor. Well, 137 and 100 have no common factors. So this would be 137% as a fraction. Now if I want to change this into a decimal, so these are all equal to each other. Now if I have over 100%, I have one whole. I have at least 100%. Now if it was 200% or more, I'd have two wholes. Over 300%, I'd have three wholes, etc., etc. So I have 100%. So I have one whole. Now, there's the decimal point. That's the one whole. Once I take that one whole out, I'm going to take that one whole now has become this right here. I am left with 37 hundredths. We can write 37 hundredths just as that. So this is the decimal equivalent of 137%. It's 137 over 100 as a fraction, which is then transferred as to 1 and 37 hundredths. If that's hard to see, you can always do the long division. And I said 137 is your dividend, 100 is your divisor. Remember, this bar just means to divide. I then could throw a decimal point, and color doesn't show up too well. I can throw a decimal point here, a decimal point up top, extend the line, the division bar. I can add numerous zeros. I can then ask myself, does 100 go into 1? No. 13? No. 137? Yes, one whole time. I will now subtract. That gives me 37. I will bring down or annex a 0. 100 goes into 370 three times. It's looking very similar so far. That gives me 300. I will subtract that 7, bring down the 0. I have 70, the remainder, bring down a 0. 100 goes into 700 7 times. All right, so that's how I can convert a percent that's greater than 100 into both a fraction and into a decimal. All right? Again, you should be copying this down as I move along. If for some reason the students need some time right now to copy this down, please pause the video so they can do that. Let's take another look at another one that has to do with a percent that's greater than 100. Let's look at another one where a percent is greater than 100. And I'm going to go to 450. So I have 450%. Now I need to write the fraction equivalent of 450% and the decimal equivalent of 450%. Now, as I was talking before, if I have 450%, I have 450 over 100. And I'm just thinking right now, 450 is at least 4 times bigger than 100. I don't like the way this looks right now because I should be able to simplify this. My thought is 50 goes into both. I'm not for certain that's the greatest common factor. I'm going to try dividing both terms, both numerator and denominator, by 50. Now I know 50 goes into 100 twice, so it'll go into 400. If it goes into 100 twice, it'll go into 400. What is that? 4 times 2 is 8 times, plus 1 more gives me 9 times, and 100 divided by 50 is 2. So 450% is the same as 9 halves. Now, 450% is equal to 9 halves. This is equal to, as a decimal, if I want to think about this, I have 450%. That is 4 wholes that I have. I have 4 wholes, so that is now gone because that is now this. And now I have 50 out of 100. 50 out of 100 is a half, or 5/10. All right, and again, if you want to think about it as a fraction, this is 9 divided by the divisor of 2. I'll put a decimal here, put a decimal up in my quotient, add a 0 here to the dividend. Say 9 goes into 2 4 times, that gives me 8. With a remainder of 1, annex the 0. 2 goes into 4, or excuse me, 2 goes into 10 5 times. Terminates, that's 4.5. So that is another way to write 450%. It's also 4.5 times 100 if you want to think about it. We're okay with that? All right, good. Now, let's take a look at ones that are a little trickier. Taking percents that are less than 100. All right, looking at the first one, let's look at this one, 3/4%. If you want to think of it this way, it's really just like we wrote the other ones. We took the percent and put it over 100. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to take 3/4 divided by 100. 3/4 divided by 100. Right? Because again, 3/4 over 100 looks a little bit odd. We're not used to putting a fraction over something, like treating a fraction as it's a numerator and putting it over denominator. So I'm going to say it like this: 3/4 divided by 100. Now, if you want to look at it this way, you could also say, wait a minute, this is really 3/4 divided by, just so now that they're both fractions, because we can take any whole number and turn it into a fraction by putting it over the number 1. So now I have 3/4 divided by 100 over 1. Now, I'm going to guess that many of you are saying, wait a minute, we have division. I need to multiply by the reciprocal of the second number. Well, the reciprocal of 100 over 1 is 1/100th. And if I multiply this out, I get 3 over 400. 3/400. So 3/4% is equivalent to 3/400ths. All right. Now, how am I going to write that? How am I going to write that as a decimal? Important to think about here is if I have 3/4%, what is 3/4 as a decimal? It is 75/100ths. 3/4 as a decimal is 75/100ths of a percent. Now, we are going to take that, just like we did before. That gives me 75/100ths. 75/100ths, all percents are over what? 100 over 100. All right. Now, I need to kick this decimal over what? 2 places to the right, don't I? So that gives me 75. But if I kick it 2 places right, I make that equivalent over here. So it's 75 over. Add 2 more zeros. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 75 10,000ths. 75 10,000ths. Now, I'm asking myself, how would I write that as a decimal? 75 10,000ths. I'm doing this, decimal point, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. 75 10,000ths. That 5 must end in the 10,000ths place. And then I'll put the 7 to the left of it and add on the 2 zeros to fill in those empty spaces. All right, I'm going to do another one of those because I think we're a little bit, that might be one we're a little struggling with. All right, so let's take a look at another one of those. Let's take a look at Let's take a look at 4/10 percent. 4/10 percent. So I have 4/10, right? And that's going to be 4/10 percent is the same as saying, hey, 4/10 divided by 100. 4/10 divided by 100. Or I can write it this way, 4/10 divided by 100. If I think about this, when we divide, I need to get that decimal point over 1, and we'll mirror that down here. So that gives me 4 thousandths. I can simplify that, but I could also say this, 4 thousandths. I'll put my 0 here to hold place value to ones. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 4 thousandths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So there it is as a decimal. If I want to simplify this, obviously in a fraction I can do 4 over 1,000. I would divide both by 4 to get an answer of 1 over 250. Alright? This is the skill that I'm a little bit worried about. But again, think about what you're doing with your mathematics, your algorithms, and I think you should be okay. Alright, hope this video helps you out. Like I said, I hope to be back on Thursday. Hope you're on your best behavior. I expect great things from you. I expect you to be respectful. And also I expect you to learn some new things today. All right, take care. Bye.